We are Group 8, which consists of Rhea, Sumbul, Aileen, and myself, Anant. Our topic is federalism and the appointment and role of the governor, especially in the opposition states. Firstly, it is necessary to understand what the terms that we have used in this video mean.
Federalism is a system of government where the same territory is governed by two levels of the government. In India, we have the central government, which is responsible for the broader governance, while state governments are responsible for the governance of individual states. This implied that there is distribution of power between the central government and the state government. India has not described itself as a federation but rather as a union of states. Through this presentation, we will be explaining how the role of the governor ties into the federalist views of the nation and whether it is being maintained or not. The governor is an administrative leader who is the head of a polity or political region. Moving on, opposition is the political party that has secured the second largest number of votes. Opposition states are those states that are ruled by the political party. A state is defined as a territory with its own government and borders within a larger country. In India, states are based on linguistic division. Speaker is presiding officer and highest authority of the Lok Sabha. Moving on, defection is the desertion of one's country or cause in favor of an opposing one. In this video, we will be explaining the role of the governor, especially in regards with opposition states and how this role is being misused by the center, thus causing our nation to move away from a democratic nation to a more autocratic nation.
The governor of a state is appointed by the president by warrant under his hand and seal for a term of 5 years. Only Indian citizens above 35 years of age are eligible for appointment to this office. Coming to the functions of the governor holds certain legislative, executive, financial, and judicial powers. I'm going to highlight the important ones, and the presentation also includes a few more of their powers. Every executive action that the state government takes is to be taken in the governor's name. They also appoint the chief minister and the state election commissioner. They look over the state budget, and the contingency fund of the state is under them, and they make advances out of that to meet unforeseen expenditure. They also have the power to grant pardons, reprieves, respites, or remissions of punishment. A constitutional emergency in the state is recommended to the president by them. And last but certainly not least, one of the most important powers that the governor enjoys is the extensive executive powers as an agent of the president during the president's rule in the state as per Article 356. Imposition of this article has been common practice in Indian states, particularly in ones headed by non-opposition parties. Such a practice like this has led to certain controversies regarding the power and office that the governor holds. The most considerable discomfort of the state governments is that a governor is neither directly elected by the people nor indirectly elected by a specially constituted electoral college, as is the case with the president. Yet, they are still perceived as an integral part of the state. The state also expresses concerns regarding the following issues: biased ideology. In several cases, politicians and former bureaucrats identifying with a particular political ideology have been appointed as the governors by the central government. This is unconstitutional as it goes against the constitutionally mandated neutral seat and has thus resulted in bias. Puppet ruling and misuse of power. A governor's recommendation for president's rule, that is Article 356 in a state, has not always been based on objective material, but more often than not on political whim or fancy. As such, negative terms like an agent of the center, puppet, and rubber stamps are used to describe a governor of the state. Abuse of power by the center. There are numerous examples of the governor's position being abused, usually at the behest of the ruling party at the center. This point is clearly understood through the actions of our current central power, one of whose earliest acts as central power was to replace 22 out of the then 29 state governors and all the 7 lieutenant governors. Now, we will delve deeper into these points and understand them better through a few case laws.
SR Bamai case. This case is a landmark case when it comes to Article 356 or the President's Rule. SR Bamai was the Chief Minister of Karnataka between August 1988 and April 1989. He led a Janata Dal government which was dismissed on 21st April 1989 when President's rule was imposed in Karnataka. Until this time, imposing President's rule was a common occurrence in states ruled by the opposition. The governor's reason for imposing Article 356 in this case was that Bamais had lost his majority because of several defections. But even though Bamai represented the governor with a copy of the resolution passed by the Janata Dal legislature party, the governor denied him any opportunity to prove his majority in the House. Bamai went to the Karnataka High Court against the governor's decision, but his petition was dismissed by the court. Then Bamai moved to the Supreme Court of India and fought a case that went on for almost 5 years. The judgment passed by the 9 judge bench was a landmark judgment because it explicitly stated that the imposition of Article 356 on a state government should not be arbitrary and there should be solid grounds for it. The court had to discuss on length about the extent of the imposition, and this helped put an end to the misuse of Article 356. Anti Governor Bill. This bill was passed in the Tamil Nadu Assembly, which is always crossing heads with its governor. The bill contains that the power of appointing vice chancellors of state run academic institutions should lie with the state rather than with the governor. This bill was passed after the governor of Tamil Nadu, R.N. Ravi, inaugurated a 2-day conference of vice chancellors of state, central, and private universities of the state without taking the state government into confidence. The bill passed cited the Gujarat University Act 1949, Telangana University Act 1991, and Karnataka University Act 2000, which allows the state government to appoint vice chancellors, to drive home the point that the state government should be empowered to appoint vice chancellors of state universities. Nabam, Rebia, and Felix was his deputy speaker. This case has a few similar elements as the S.R. Bamai case. Here, Nabam Tuki won the Arunachal Pradesh elections with a full majority, but crisis occurred when 33 members of the Legislative Assembly rebelled against the Chief Minister. Speaker Nabam disqualified the rebels on the basis of anti-defection laws before the assembly could meet. The rebel members went to the governor to express their dissatisfaction against the speaker, and the governor then, without the aid of the state, preponed the assembly meeting and appointed a rebel as the deputy speaker and imposed president's rule. Nabam appealed in the Guwahati High Court and then to the Supreme Court when the appeal was rejected by the High Court. The main issues of the case that were discussed in the court were whether the decision of the governor to prepone the assembly session was constitutional and whether the imposition of the president's rule was constitutional. The judgment that was passed by the Supreme Court said that the power of the governor is limited to the scope postulated in Article 163, Section 1, and that it is not open for interpretations, and there shouldn't be any conflict of interest, and its exercise is not immune from judicial review. The court further said that the governor's manner of conducting the assembly is under violation of Article 163 and Article 174 of the Constitution. Thus, the court concludes that the actions of the governor in the present case are against the spirit of parliamentary democracy and responsible governments. Anti-NEET Bill. One of the most talked about bill recently has been the Anti-NEET Bill, which was introduced by the Tamil Nadu state government. The bill in itself doesn't have any content that would incite conflict, but the governor's way of handling the bill was what upset the state. The state accused the governor of not following his duties by keeping the bill stagnant by not forwarding it to the president as is required of him to do. And this is in fact the case for many bills where the governor neglects to forward it to the president. And currently there are 11 bills pending with R.N. Ravi, the governor of Tamil Nadu.
Through our presentation, we hope that the role of the governor, the power that this role holds, and the misuse of this power is made evident. Based on the data collected, it is blatantly obvious that this power has been misused by the center since independence, and over the last 10 years, it has only gotten worse. This leads us to the crux of the issue, which is that when the governor's powers are misused, the opposition state leader, the chief minister, loses the power that he has. Governor is a position that is not elected, but it's rather appointed by the center, while the chief minister is one that is elected, and thus democratic nature is upheld in positions like this, where the people's votes are directly taken into consideration. In a sense, when the power of the chief minister is overthrown by the power of the governor, democracy starts to deteriorate and autocracy takes its position. This role is a remnant of the British Raj, which was used by the British to control the people of our nation and to make sure that the separate states did not act individually. When this was reused in post independence India, it was not intended to be used for the same purpose. Rather, it was a dual role that would help the elected assembly of the state by offering advice and remain impartial and judicial. There are various ways that this could be managed better. Firstly, with the fact that rather than the president appointing a governor, they should be elected with the help of the state legislature and the interstate council. This will ensure that the disagreements that the state government and the governor face will be considerably decreased. The role of the Rajya Sabha and the interstate council as the chamber of federalism must be strengthened. The governor should also be someone who is familiar with the state rather than someone who is an outsider. As a nation with various cultures and languages, someone who is in key position should be familiar with the culture and landscape of the state rather than be an outsider. We also believe that there should be a code of conduct which lays down the norms and principles that the governor should follow and adhere to while exercising their powers. The governor's role is pivotal, yet ironically minor, and it's still used by the central government to control the state government. This, in fact, leads to question whether the role of governor and the position itself is really necessary or not.